When Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 was announced last month, it sent the community into a frenzy. With more questions than answers, speculation was rife, and to be honest, it still is. However, since the release of the initial trailer for this upcoming installment in the Microsoft Flight Simulator franchise, we have received an updated frequently asked questions page, as well as a live discussion about it at FS Expo in Houston, which I attended in person. So in today's video, I'll be wrapping up all this information into hopefully a pretty short and digestible video. So welcome to everything we know about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 so far. If you're new around here or just haven't got round to it yet, do be sure to subscribe, it means a lot. As with most of my videos, today's is split into chapters, so feel free to skip to the bits you want to hear about. I should also say, as we're discussing the future here, although I've tried to stick to the facts as much as possible, everything is subject to change. So don't take this as scripture, it may indeed differ down the line. First off, we'll kick it off with the big one. Why? Why are the Microsoft Flight Sim team bringing another installment out there when there is plenty of work to be done on the current version, Microsoft Flight Sim 2020? Well, basically, in the words of Asobo and Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 has sort of outgrown itself. Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 allows both the Microsoft and Asobo team to build a sim from the ground up. Now, I know that may annoy some people, but it is a fair enough point, and to be blunt, you cannot build a brand new simulator without the money for it. Of course, this should mean Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 is optimised better, which is really important when you consider that in the current version there is some old Flight Simulator X code left in there. Now, that's not to say they are abandoning their current sim. Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 will continue to receive updates in years to come. The 10-year mark that was thrown about, well, sadly nowadays remains a bit ambiguous. But rest assured, 2020 will not be abandoned. Anyway, with that, let's kick off with the real information. Now, we'll start off with the fundamentals. As spoken about by Seb, CEO of Asobo at FS Expo, a real focus of Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 is to have a streamlined yet powerful engine working hard behind the scenes. In some ways, this just goes beyond what they did initially with Microsoft Flight Sim. They aim to have what they call a thin client, utilising more and more of the cloud and its associated digital services. This is of course something they started using when Microsoft Flight Sim was first released. Now, I am no computer scientist, but I know this is important to the consumer as it will take away some of the work from your PC, hopefully improving performance. However, it can be a double-edged sword. Of course, Microsoft Flight Sim will have to balance that out. Using the cloud, of course, requires a stronger internet connection, and of course that server itself has got to be stable, but I'm sure for the team that'll be no issue. There will also be improved multi-threading to improve performance on your CPU, and we'll be speaking more about performance later. Now, sticking with the idea of a sim engine, let's turn our attention to the new physics and aerodynamics engine set for release. Again, with 2020, according to the FS Expo discussion, they sort of hit a roadblock with their aerodynamic engine, which explained the initial difficulty getting helicopters into the sim, although I would question this somewhat because external developers seem to do it. But according to Seb, the aerodynamics engine in 2024 is going to be superb, even allowing for the realistic simulation of slightly more uncommon aircraft, such as hot air balloons, and as we saw from the trailer, airships. All in all, behind the scenes, Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 looks to be much improved compared to the current installment. You can sort of see already at this point why they do need a new simulator if they are experiencing the problems they've been talking about, and to be honest, I don't think they'd lie. Of course, we won't know until we try out the new sim firsthand, but some promising improvements behind the scenes nonetheless. Now we move on to scenery. It would be near on impossible impossible to recreate that wow factor we all felt when we first saw the scenery of Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, but that does not mean there are not improvements to make. There is a plethora of changes to the quote digital twin, which is basically the replica of the real world digitalized. These improvements can be divided to 3 categories, roughly. Changes to the static, the living and the dynamic world. That includes improved ground details, enhanced 3D trees, commonplace animal herds and migrations, worldwide live ship traffic, accurate live air traffic, with real world liveries being painted on real world AI traffic models. All 4 seasons, both the northern and southern lights, as well as realistic storms and tornadoes. So there are certainly plenty of things to get excited for in terms of scenery, with a clear focus on making the world feel more alive, with an improved weather engine and all those aforementioned features. Now, some of those features were at the very least requested to be on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, but it is good to see them definitely coming over to Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, although I can perfectly understand the frustration caused by some of those features not being at 2020 at the moment when they had sort of been promised in the past. All in all, it seems that scenery will see significant improvements. Of course, it's not going to be between the level of Flight Sim X and 2020, that would just be unrealistic, borderline impossible, but they're definitely tying up some loose ends. Now we move over to the part of the video where we're still waiting on a lot of details. Aircraft. Now from the trailer we know we will have these following 15 aircraft in the sim at the very least. Let's kick it off, shall we? The Canadair CL415, the Airbus AS350 which is a helicopter, the Cessna 208 Caravan, the Cessna 188 which is a crop duster, the Sikorsky S64 Sky Crane, the famous Airbus Beluga, the Airbus A400M, the Diamond DA62, the Extra 300, the DG800 Glider, the experimental Jetson 1, the A10 Thunderbolt 2, the Cirrus SF50 Vision Jet, the Skyship 600 which is a British airship, and a hot air balloon. So an interesting mix already, but we all know there is something very big missing from that list. Airliners, and I will be touching on that in a moment. Now, according to the frequently asked questions on the Microsoft Flight Sim forum, all default aircraft will be incredibly realistic, featuring advanced avionics and systems, as well as a new wear and tear feature, which I guess may also include state saving. We didn't see too much of that in the trailer, so they're obviously still working on them, and of course, as I said, something very big is missing from the trailer. Now fear not, there will be a lot of new airliners in the sim. I'm guessing we may see a dedicated trailer speaking about airliners in 2024, as of course it pretty much is the biggest part of the sim. Now we do see what appears to be an A330 as well as an A320 in the trailer, but to be honest with you, that could all be the new AI traffic in the sim. So as far as we know, all we know so far is that we will be getting a few new airliners in the sim. We don't know what models. I'm going to take a punt and say the 747 will once again feature, and maybe the A321 if we trace it back to the FSX days, but that is speculation. Sadly, no more news here. Now moving over to performance, we have very limited information on this one. According to the Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 frequently asked questions, they are aiming to keep pretty similar minimum system requirements from 2020. Now is that going to be possible if they are improving the sim as massively as they say they are? Well, only time will tell. I guess the thinner client may help here, but a lot of questions remain about performance on the whole, as well as with VR improvements for all you VR simmers. Well, there's a complete lack of details there. As I said at the start, this will also be coming to both PC and Xbox, so that's got to be considered as well. Moving on to missions and multiplayer, this is the controversial bit from the initial trailer. York from Microsoft Flight Sim describes the missions we saw in the trailer as accurate aviation activities. That's direct from FS Expo. To many, it seemed that Microsoft Flight Sim was indeed being gamified or arcadified. I don't even know if they're both words, but you can get my drift there. And in many ways, I sort of feel it may be, because money talks at the end of the day, but they are all doing this out of passion, and speaking to them in person at the event in Houston, you could tell they're not all about the money, but at the end of the day they are a business, so I guess it's sort of balancing the books there. At the Microsoft Flight Sim talk at FS Expo, they were quick to ensure that these activities will be as realistic as possible, and they are indeed working with real life partners to develop them. You've also got to remember that all modern Microsoft Flight Sim installments have had some form of mission system in the past, but this time there does seem to be a big focus on them. I know for sure they definitely won't abandon the sort of free flight part of simming, because that is the biggest bit at the end of the day. Sadly, we haven't heard too much about multiplayer, although I can certainly say there's a lot of improvements that need to go on there. So it'll be interesting to hear more when that information is announced. Now finally we move on to an aspect of flight simming that has only intensified in recent years, and that is add-ons. And as so many of us have racked up hundreds of pounds of add-ons on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, rightfully so, there's a lot of questions and interest here. Will these be compatible with Microsoft Flight Sim 2024? Well, to be honest with you, the answer is probably, but not certainly. The Microsoft Flight Sim team were deliberately ambiguous on their forum post, and I'm sure that's for good reason. It seems to be swaying to the fact that add-ons you've bought on the marketplace, they should be compatible with the new sim, but with external add-ons, well, that seems to be the tricky bit. On the bright side, some add-on devs have already announced that they will offer free Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 upgrades if it ends that well, but it's definitely not going to be an easy ride on this side of it all. As I said, they've been deliberately ambiguous. I guess they just can't go up and say, yes, they'll all 100% be compatible, just in case they're not, and that's fair enough. I know it's not the best news, but that is how it is. On that note, guys, there is all the information we have about Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 so far. This has been a pretty wordy, extensive video, so I hope you've stuck with me and enjoyed, maybe learned something, and if I've missed something out, do be sure to let me know down below. Some good news, some bad news, and a lot of questions that need to be answered. What do you think? Personally, I remain cautiously optimistic for Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. It's quite clear that a lot of the features they want to bring over into Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 are sort of limiting it. And for good or bad, it just seems that is the way it is. Do share your thoughts down below, but personally, I'm excited for this new sim. One thing we don't know is how much it was going to cost. We do know it will be coming on the Game Pass. On that note, guys, be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see you all around. Have a good one. Bye bye.